If your pitchers are struggling in a game and you want to go out there and have a mound visit or talk to them about some mechanical adjustments, what can you help them with during a game and what should be left alone that will only make them overthink and make things worse? In this video, we're going to cover in-game coaching, things that you can control as a coach, and things that you should leave alone that will only make things worse. So if you're new here, I'm Blewett. I'm a former pro pitcher. I'm also the author of 5 baseball books, including my new one, The Art of the Mound Visit, which you'll find in the description below. If you're looking for a book to help you with your soft skills as a pitching coach, how to manage your team, how to have more productive mound visits, what to say in a mound visit, check out my new book, The Art of the Mound Visit. So this video is going to be in 2 sections. Feel free to jump through the timestamps below. Section 1 is stuff that you can help your pitchers with. Section 2 is stuff that you should leave alone. That's probably only going to make problems worse if you start filling your kids' heads with mechanical advice that they really can't fix in a game. Now, I do want to give a disclaimer on all of this. You have to know your pitchers. You have to know which kids overthink. You have to know which kids you can give them mechanical advice and they actually can make those adjustments, and which kids maybe aren't very good adjustment makers yet. And how you deliver your advice is going to vary widely depending on what kid you're talking to. So if this is a kid who's very cerebral but tends to spiral and think about their mechanics too much, you might not want to give them many mechanical cues at all and maybe keep it focused on mindset if you have a visit or a dugout chat between innings. For a kid who's has pretty good body control and knows how to make adjustments, they might be more receptive to 1 or 2 little things that they can actually fix during a game. So it really helps to know who you're talking to and don't just give blanket advice to everyone. You really want to make sure you say, okay, if I give them this advice, how is this individual player going to interpret it and deal with it? If they're not going to deal with it well, they're not going to be able to make that adjustment and they're going to start overthinking and that's going to make stuff worse, then I would say just keep it a really high level about mindset and strategy and just encouragement to get them back on track when they're struggling. All right, let's start with some of the simple things that you can coach pitchers on during a game, whether it's in a mound visit or it's on the bench in between innings. So number one of the best cues you can use are your eyes. So tell kids, hey, I want you to stare at the catcher longer, or I want you to see down your front shoulder as long as you can. I want you to see your glove arm in your field of vision a little bit longer. If you see your glove arm leave your field of vision, that's telling you that you need to get it back up, right? I want you to see your shoulders tilt a little bit longer. Your eyes are incredibly important for throwing strikes and for keeping your mechanics in one piece. The other thing that the eyes do is they can sometimes lead us astray. So as an example, most pitchers, their eyes will leave the catcher at some point, and then they'll pick it back up at some point in their delivery. That's totally fine. But some pitchers can get astray because of this. And the common way is they start looking at their feet too much. So if I'm going through my delivery and I'm down here, I can start to roll over and I can start to hunch over, and then it's hard for me to recover, and then I might start striding across my body. You have to know your pitchers and what kind of problems that they face, and that comes from trial and error and just working with them. But with their eyes, this is the biggest cue that I use in mound visits when a pitcher is mechanically struggling. Like if I see their front shoulders low, I see them start to rush too much, I see them flying open, landing open, I'll say, hey, I want you to see down your front shoulder as long as you can, and I want you to see it. Just keep it all the way there as long as you possibly can. And that's going to help keep them closed. It's going to help keep their weight back longer. And it's going to allow them to then sort of pull with that front side and really ram the ball through the strike zone. So the number one thing I would say as a pitching coach, when you have mound visits or you're trying to help kids tinker with their mechanics between innings when they're struggling, is to leverage what they see in their field of vision. Front shoulders, not looking at the ground, picking up the catcher, whatever it is, use your eyes. They can control what they see really easily without derailing the rest of their mechanics and then overthinking too much. When pitchers get stressed, they start to move a little faster. When they move a little faster, they start to shift their weight forward too soon. All of that is very, very bad for throwing strikes and throwing as hard as they need to throw. So you can just say, hey, I want you to keep a little weight in your back leg a little bit longer. I want you to sit in your back leg a little longer. Or I want you to go uphill with your shoulders a little bit longer. When your shoulders are kind of tilting uphill, it pushes weight into your back leg a little bit more. Those can both really help pitchers get back on track when they start to rush too much. But it's no problem. It won't cause overthinking if you say, hey, just sit back in your back leg, keep a little more weight there, and go uphill with your shoulders. Those are easy cues that pitchers can handle, because it's like, all right, I feel the weight in my back leg, but I'm still otherwise fully focused on making my pitch. And that's what you want. When you're helping pitchers make adjustments, you want them to have a really simple thing they can do mechanically while still keeping all of their mental bandwidth focused on making a great pitch. One of the best coaching tools is giving pitchers advice on what to do with their glove arm during a game. If their glove arm is doing this or is leading them here, they're going to start, their arms will probably drop a little bit. They're going to struggle to get on top of their off-speed stuff. They're going to struggle to throw strikes in general. So as a coach, if you go out and have a mound visit, you can say, hey, with your glove arm, I want you to go uphill with your glove arm. I want you to see your glove arm in your field of vision as long as you can, right? Keep your glove arm up a little bit longer. Glove arm cues are really simple, and they're really impactful for helping pitchers get back on track. Now, you're not gonna be able to fix a pitcher's glove arm. If they do something weird, the action of their glove arm in general is not gonna change in a game. So don't try to change the action of their glove arm, just try to get it back on track. So lots of times pitchers who are usually here, they will start to get here during a game, or they'll start to get here during a game. Your goal is just to get their glove arm back to doing what it usually does. No more, no less. Another great cue for in games is what their head is doing. Lots of times young pitchers, they start to throw too hard and they start to dump their head out like they're pouring water out of their ear, or they're looking at their feet. And we've talked about eyes a bunch, but head movement is really important. So basically, if their head's doing something really wonky, their body might be following, or their head might be following their body, they can kind of go back and forth. But in general, if you see a pitcher really start to get offline with their stride, or their arm looks strange, and you see a lot of head movement, just say, hey, I want you to try to like keep your eyes a little bit more level. Keep your head a little bit more level throughout your delivery. And that can also often make a really big impact on what their trunk does, what their lower half does, the direction of their body. So head movement can be really impactful, a really good teach during a game. Another great in-game coaching cue for pitchers is their visual focal point. So say they're bouncing all their curveballs in the dirt and they're getting frustrated. The chances are they're probably focusing on the catcher's mitt. And so now, instead of focusing on the catcher's mitt and bouncing it, you'll say, hey, let's take your focal point up to the catcher's mask. I want you to start that curveball for the catcher's mask, and let's see if we can get it to break for the catcher's mitt. So just where they start the pitch can make a really big difference. Say everything is down and into the dirt. You can ask them to not look at the catcher's mitt, but to look maybe up the catcher's shoulder to help pull them back in that direction. So use focal point as a really good visual cue to help your pitchers start to try to bring pitches into a different zone if they're missing in a consistent way. Another big problem during games that pitchers face is that their tempo speeds up. It might be the overall actions of the delivery as they get stressed, say there's the bases loaded, or they might just start rushing down the mound too fast with runners on base. So coaching them on tempo can be really impactful. And usually that just starts with, hey, let's take a deep breath. Let your shoulders droop a little bit, right? I want you to feel your weight in your back leg a little bit longer. I want you to tilt your shoulders a little bit more, but I want you to take your time. I want you to slow things down, take another deep breath between pitches. But helping pitchers get their tempo under control can make a really big impact on getting them back into throwing strikes. Let's talk about intensity. Sometimes in a game, you'll see pitchers that don't follow through very well, or they start to aim the ball. And typically these are just stress responses. I'm not throwing strikes, so I'm gonna try to really guide it in there to make sure I throw strikes, right? I'm gonna try to make the perfect pitch, so now I'm not really following through, I'm easing off. This is a mindset challenge more than anything else. So in mound visits like that, where pitcher's easing off, I'll go out there and I'll say, hey, I don't care if you walk the next 3 batters, I just want you to fire this ball in there. Ram it through the strike zone. You could throw 12 balls in a row, I will be totally fine as long as you don't aim another one. And obviously I don't want them to walk 3 more hitters, but I'm telling them, I want you to focus on the process of throwing the ball hard, and I'm not worried about the outcome, because they're terrified of the outcome in that moment, which is I'm feeling out of control and I don't feel like I can throw strikes. Therefore, I'm trying to regain control and throw darts, which really just makes the problem worse. You don't throw more strikes when you're aiming and not following through. You throw fewer strikes, and all of your off-speed stuff gets worse. Now, obviously we don't want overthrowing. Overthrowing is when we're throwing too hard and we can't control it there either, but we want to find that sweet spot of like 98% of our velocity where we're really letting it go and not afraid, And that's what we're trying to get our pitchers back to doing. All right, now let's talk about some of the trickier items that you maybe don't want to discuss during a game, whether it's on the bench or in a mound visit, because you can't fix a lot of pitching mechanics in a game. You can make little adjustments. You can help your pitchers make little adjustments, that is, but you really can't overhaul lots of things. And pitching is a very high speed movement that has to be in sync. And so if you're asking them to control parts of their body that need to be in sync or high-speed movements, it's gonna make things more complicated for them as they try to say, okay, I need my joint angle to be at 90 degrees, but also I need to get this hitter out. It's not gonna work. So you have to really tread lightly on stuff that takes too much mental bandwidth to control from a pitching mechanics standpoint, where it derails them from actually being able to do their job. So number one, never coach your pitchers on stride length. Never tell them to shorten their stride. Never tell them to stride longer. They're going to try to okay, I need to land here. Coach said land 2 inches shorter and that will give me over my breaking ball more. That was an old teach. I've been taught that in my past when I was a kid. Hey, if you want to throw a better changeup, shorten your stride a little bit and you'll get on top of it. Or shorten your stride on your curveball. It'll help you get on top of it. That makes logical sense, but it does not work. And if you go to a Major League Baseball game and you were to look at the mound, you would see that every pitcher lands in the same exact spot on every single pitch. Literally no one does this. And the reason they don't do it is because it's too hard to control. I can't land, I'm striding 72 inches and now you want me to land 70 inches? How does a person do that? You can't. So do not coach them on stride length. Now, what you can do is say your pitcher is really pushing one day, they're trying to throw harder, and you can see that that's not normal for them. You can say, hey, I see that you're really shoving yourself down the mound. All I want you to do is just relax, and I want you to sit in your back leg a little longer, but I don't want you to shove yourself so far, right? You can coach them out of stuff that they're doing that's abnormal. I definitely had games like this when I was a kid where I was trying to throw harder, and I'm dipping and driving and launching myself down the mound. And a good pitching coach would say, hey, this is not the time to do that. I just need you to stay tall. I need you to sit in your back leg, use your back leg, but you can't push yourself that far. You're getting out of whack, right? If there's a lower half thing that's going on, you can address that in a very simple way, but never ask a pitcher to shorten or lengthen their stride. Second thing with stride is direction. Now, you can easily say, hey, I want you to take your ankle straight towards the catcher. That's something that I would tell pitchers if I see them getting way off track, like striding way across their body or landing too far open. That's a pretty good cue. That's pretty easy. They can think about their ankle bone and they can think about pointing their ankle bone towards home plate a little bit more without derailing the rest of their mechanics. That works fine. However, if they're getting really far across their body or really far open, it's probably not going to get fixed in the game. Other reasons this might be happening could be their eyes. So if they start to they're looking down too much and they're hunching too much, it's really hard to be straight. They end up following their chest and their eyes. Or if they're landing open too much, it's usually a glove arm thing. Their glove arm goes and their lower half goes. So stride direction is usually a byproduct of something else mechanically. If they're pretty, straight up and tall and they're pretty up and down and they push with their back leg, they're pushing against the rubber. That's kind of how you push with your back leg. If they're doing all that stuff, they'll be relatively straight. So again, you're looking for things that are abnormal, things they don't usually do, but think about their eyes, think about their posture, think about their glove arm, and you can give them a little cue about their ankle, but that's really about it when it comes to stride direction. Anything else, if you're hey, I need you to stride 3 inches more, I need you to land in this spot, never cue them to land in a certain spot because it's gonna be way hard. They're gonna be trying to land a helicopter basically on a pad, and it's gonna make everything worse. Now, the big one that you do not want to tinker with is arm action. Never go out to the mound and say, I need you to get your elbow up. I need you to get to that good 90-degree position that we talked about in practice. If you do this, it will absolutely screw your pitcher up. They cannot solve their arm action during a game. That is a practice thing. They're going to have to work on that in drills, in their next bullpen, playing catch, but never go out and tell them to get their arm up. No, never tell them to point the ball a certain way. Never tell them to pull their elbow back farther. Never tell them to do anything with their arm action in a game. It only makes things worse. This is a piece that has to be hitched up with the rest of the body. It has to be in sync and in time, and it becomes a high-speed motion as the arm lays back to accelerate. When they go out to the mound, this is a recital for their arm action. It's a recital for a lot of their mechanics. And so you're not going to be able to fix this. Just leave it alone. There could be other mechanical items that are causing a change in their arm action. If you see those, great. But overall, do not tamper with arm action. Now, when pitchers are not throwing their changeup very effectively in a game, or their curveball is not very good, it's really tricky on how to give them advice on how to tweak this during a game. So let's talk about that. Number one, you don't ever want to tell them, drop the ball. Don't ever want to tell them, this is how you should twist your wrist, or you've got to do this, or you've got to do more of this. Don't have them thinking about what they're doing with their hand or the way they're releasing the ball, because that's a high-speed movement. What you can talk about is just general hand positioning. Like say, hey, I think you're getting around. You're getting on the side of a lot of those curveballs. You're getting on the side of a lot of those changeups. Just think mentally about being a little bit more on top of the ball. That they can easily handle. They can think, okay, I know where my hand is in space. I just want to get on top of this curveball a little bit more, right? One cue I use for curveballs is think about getting your middle fingernail or middle knuckle pointed towards the catcher. Now, that won't happen in real life. That's not how they actually release a curveball, but it helps them think, okay, I get my hand at the top of the ball. That's going to help them kind of flatten out that curveball when it gets too side to side loopy. So it's okay to talk about hand positioning and finger positioning in general on top or on the side, stuff like that. But it's not a good idea to go out there and start relitigating how to throw a changeup and how to spin it and how to do all that. That's not a good idea. In between innings, it's also not a great idea to talk about grips, because the grip they came out here with is the one they've been practicing on for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's not the right time to change it in a game. So you can ask them what's going on in the dugout for sure, and you can talk about it. But in general, little stuff on top, on the side, how relaxed are they? Is their hand too tense? Are they over gripping the ball? Those are common problems in a game. But beyond that, don't tinker too much with how a pitcher releases any given pitch. And the other mechanical thing you don't want to tinker with in games with pitchers is how their lower half lands. So I know a lot of pitchers, they'll work on their lead leg block, which is straightening this leg out to sort of catapult power towards the plate. And that's all well and good, but if they're not doing it effectively in a game, like say they've been working on it and it's not showing up and you as a coach notice this, in a game is not the time to work on that. It's also not a time to say, I want you to land on your heel versus your flat foot, or I want you to land on your flat foot versus your toe. Whatever you're working on with landing, the lower leg action, the knee action, the foot action, do not touch this stuff in the game, because now, again, it's kind of like the helicopter. They're going to think about, how do I land my helicopter in the exact perfect place while trying to make a good pitch? It's going to be way too much to think about, and they're not going to be able to control that effectively. Don't talk about lower half or lead leg, how they land, how their leg braces, any of that stuff during a game. It's not a good idea. That's stuff that has to be addressed in practice and fixed with drills and fixed with repetition and fixed with time. Some of this stuff you could say, yeah, I can work on stride direction with this pitcher, but not this other pitcher. Or there's some other cues that I use that actually work really well. Or this cue that you used, Dan, didn't work very well on this one pitcher. There's a ton of variability based on who you're talking to, who the kid is, how old they are, their experience with pitching, their body control, all that stuff. So nothing is really set in stone, and you can just try and tinker. But I think on some of the ones that I'll say, pretty much stay away from these ones, I really would encourage you to let those ones go. On the stuff that's more in bounds and fair game, then I would say continue to tinker and find your own coaching voice and figure out what works for you and your players and what doesn't. All right, so if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. Check out my online courses. I have a great beginner and advanced pitching course, and also my new book, The Art of the Mound Visit. You'll find all those in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you here in the next video.